Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video I'm just going to talk about all the 12 books that I picked as my book club books for 2024. The reviews for each and every one of these 12 books is linked down in the description because I've made separate videos for each and every one of them. And in 2025 also I'm continuing on with the book club, and these are the 3 books which we'll be reading in the first quarter, which are Tea for Two and a Piece of Cake by Preeti Shenoy for January, Incredia or Loon of Prida by Saran Mahajan for February, and The Black Magic Women by Moushami Kandali for March. Do let me know down in the comments whether you will be reading the book club picks with me in the respective months for 2025. And without any further ado, let's get into the books that I read as the book club picks for 2024. Starting with January, the book that I picked up for January was an Indian mythological fiction book, which is Asura, Tale of the Vanquished by Anand, Neelakantan, which is a retelling of the Ramayana story but with Ravana as the main character. So we follow not the life story of Ram but the life story of Ravana throughout this book, and it is one of the most well-written mythological fictions that I've read so far. And the author also not just depends on the very popular form of the Ramayana that we follow in our country, but the different kinds of Ramayana that are narrated in different parts of the world depending upon each and every one of their cultures. The best part about this book, if you ask me, is the depiction of Ravana as the main character and how he is shown to grow as a person here. Now, Ravana is not shown as a good person or a bad person here. He's just a person to whom many things have happened, and of those many things, most are bad things which should not have happened to many people. And all of those things actually happened to him just because of the fact that he's born an Asura. After reading this book, you'll not be able to see the Ramayana with the same perspective ever again. I know that I am not able to after I finished reading Asura. And if you have read Ravan by Amish Tripathi before this one, please go forward and try reading this book because this is much better than Amish's retelling of Ravana's story. I know there's no need to compare these two books, but since I've read both of these in the same year itself, I can see that this is a much better retelling compared to that. So the start of the year with this book was a banger. After finishing such a good book in January, the second book, which was in February, was an utter flop, and it is The Perfect Us by Durjoy Datta. I hated this book to such an extent that even after highlighting many lines inside the book, I just went forward and unhauled it because I did not want it on my shelf anymore, because this is one of the most depressing books that I've read ever, okay? And it was presented as a love story, which it is for some extent, but after that it just becomes like a very boring, normal serial that we see, which is not even good. I know that Durjoy Datta is a huge name when it comes to our Indian publishing industry, but this book is not even nearly as good as the other books that I've read by him so far. I'll not be reading most of his books anymore in the future. I will be reading some of them, like The Boy Who Loved and The Boy with a Broken Heart, but stories like this one from him are not for me. I don't want that in my life. I've also talked in detail about what all I did not like about this book in the review, which is linked in the description. You can go forward and check it out if you're interested. And for March, we read a historical fiction book, and since it was the month with Women's Day in it, I wanted to read a book that has a female main character. So we went with Cilka's Journey by HeatherMorris, which is kind of a companion slash sequel to The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which was my best read from 2023. Now, this book did not take that much time for me to read. It's quite a huge book, but if you start reading it, you'll be able to finish it in hardly 2 or 3 days because the story moves really, really well. Here we follow the life story of Cilka, who's one of the side characters from The Tattooist of Auschwitz, who keeps that story moving and helps our main characters on another level inside that book. Here we just see what happens to Cilka after the end of The Tattooist of Auschwitz and what all turns her life takes. Just like she was in that first book, which is The Tattooist of Auschwitz, her character here does not change. She helps as many people as she can in all the ways that is possible by her, and she remains a survivor by the end of this book too. It's not a huge spoil, okay? Everyone wants Cilka to live after reading that book and also while reading this book. And just telling you guys that you need not worry if you're going to read this book, because these books are about the stories of hope, and they are not going to end in a bad note at all. Horrible things happen inside the book, but towards the end, the hope that the person carries is the message that is delivered by the story here, and that is done exactly as it is intended to be using Cilka's character here. So for March, again, the book was a huge hit for me. And for April, I picked up a murder mystery slash thriller book. It's actually a psychological thriller, and it is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. Now, I have not read The Silent Patient by this author before reading this book, and while I read this one, I enjoyed it very much, okay? It's not like the perfect thriller if you ask me, but it is definitely a page turner. I like the author's writing style very much and the incorporation of mythology that he ties into his main story and narrates it to us. And both of these books, which is this one as well as The Silent Patient, kind of happen inside the same world because there's a mention of the main character from that book which is set here, and the main character whom we follow here and that are in some way connected to each other. That is made very clear inside this book. I want to read The Silent Patient at some point. I don't know when I'll be reading it, but this one I thoroughly enjoy. If you're a beginner who wants to read a good thriller book, this is definitely one you can go forward and pick up. For me, I read a literary fiction book and this was just amazing. Again, very atmospheric and needs to be read during the monsoon season, not like in the summer that I did, which is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Now, this was one of the most satisfying books which I read for the book club throughout 2024. And I've heard nothing but great things about this book from everyone who has read and talked about it, both here in BookTube as well as in my real life. Here we follow the life story of this girl named Kaya who's been completely abandoned by her family because of various reasons, and she's growing up all alone inside this marshland in this very small town. Because of the fact that she's alone, there is a lot of misconception that the people inside the town have on her, and there is just one family alone who have basically adopted her and take care of every need that Kaya has, and she is also very loving towards them. She falls in love with two people in her life during two different parts of her life, and the story is narrated in the past and present way for us, and through that we see the growth that Kaya has in her life. In a way, it is also a murder mystery book, but that is not the main plot if you ask me. The life story of Kaya is the one which matters the most here, and that is what the author focuses on for most parts. So if you want to read a nice literary fiction book with a really good main character and strong writing, Where the Crawdads Sing is something which you cannot miss. And for June, I think I read the biggest of all the books inside my book club picks for 2024, which is The Windup Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami, which is a bind-up of 3 books from the original Japanese language. Now, this is a magical realism book in which we follow our main character who's married to this woman. And for some reason, he has lost his job and he is kind of the homemaker right now, and his wife is earning for their household. Their life is not perfect. They have a lot of miscommunication and things that they are hiding from each other. And since he's also all alone in his house for most part of the day, he ends up making friendships with very peculiar different people inside his life, with whom a person of his age would not usually make friendships with. And from there are so many things that are explored by the author, just like he usually does in any of his other books. If you are someone who enjoys Murakami's writing style, this book is something you cannot miss. It's a huge book. It will take a little bit of time to read, but trust me, the experience of reading this book was just out of the world. Since it is also divided into 3 parts and happens across different years, and the way in which, Murakami includes different timelines from different people's lives and uses things together using the very peculiar kinds of magic that he uses inside this book has made use of very well here. I want to reread this sometime in the future and also annotate a lot of stuff. The font inside this book is just tiny. See how little it is. And I think I read this book over 2 weeks or so. It was completely worth it. And just take your time, read it during the colder seasons of the year again, because it will be perfect for that. So July was basically the worst month that I had in 2024. And this book did not make it any better. It actually made it far worse, because it ended up being the most disappointing book that I read in 2024 if I'm not wrong. And it is a non-fiction book. That's the worst part, which is Mindset by Dr. Carol S. Dweck. Now, I can say that this was one book which is not at all for me or people who have already read a lot of self-help books and non-fiction books, okay? If you're already in your personal development journey, this book is something that you don't need, in my personal opinion, because it does not say anything new at all. We all basically know that a growth mindset is good and a fixed mindset is not good, right? That's the one-line summary for this book, if you ask me. The author goes on and quotes a lot of examples of people who have had a growth mindset and succeeded in their lives and does nothing else inside this book. There is no way in which the author has explained how you can develop a growth mindset for yourself, and it was very disappointing for me. I kept on expecting that my thought about this book was going to change at some point and the author is just going to make me feel like a fool for thinking that this book was bad. But towards the end, I was again disappointed only because I did not get anything valuable out of it at all. So if you have read many self-help books, this is not something that you need to read. But if you're in the beginning of your personal development journey or reading self-help books in that phase of your life, this is something that you can give a try to, but it will not help you to such a great extent. So of all these 12 books, even more than The Perfect Us, this is the one which disappointed me the most. For August, we read a YA contemporary book and it was so good. Okay, this is one of the best YA contemporary books that I've read so far, and I'd highly suggest anyone who's a teenager to go forward and read this book because it is very realistic. Very real even, not even realistic. And it is The Serpent King by Jeff Zentner, in which we follow our main character Dil and his 2 friends. Okay, all these 3 people are very close to each other and they are in the final year of their high school. There are 2 boys and 1 girl, and that 1 girl, she is very clear about all the things that she wants in her life because she has lived a privileged life. Her family is good, they are very supportive, and these 2 boys have to deal with a lot of shit in their lives because of so many different reasons. For example, our main character Dil here has only his mother with him, and she is also not in a great place financially and to support him in any way. And they are also very, very religious inside his house. His father was actually a pastor and he's been imprisoned right now because of a sexual harassment that he did. And the third character whom we see here is another guy, and his father is basically like totally abusive towards his wife as well as his son. Now these two boys and this one girl are friends with each other and they almost know everything about each other's lives. How such different people come together and support each other in their lives, especially during this very young age, which is a transition between childhood and adulthood, is really beautifully shown inside this book. It's very, very realistic and will resonate with so many readers who read it. So if you are a teenager, The Serpent King is definitely one book you need to read because it can open up a lot of doors for you. Next, we have a literary fiction book, which also has like a hint of magical realism here and there. And I think this was the most difficult for me to read of all the books that I picked for my book club in 2024, and it is Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. I'm sorry, the book's cover is getting blurred away. And this was also shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2018. That's the reason why I bought that book in the first place. So here we follow our main character Gretel, and she's living all alone right now because she came away from her mother, who was not in a better place in life at all. And after years from when she was separated from her mother, she's trying to find her back again. And she has very peculiar ways of doing it. After she finds her mother, both of them get to experience the past that they had together, which is not at all pleasant, and how it has affected their current lives and what they're going to do henceforth with it. It is in no way a happy book at all. It is quite sad, but the writing of the author is very brilliant here. I think that's the reason why it was even shortlisted for the Booker Prize in the first place. If you want to read a very peculiar story, which is very different from the normal literary fiction that we read, this is definitely one you can go for and read. It's not even that huge, but the language will be a little difficult to understand. As a whole, this is another book that you can read during the rainy season in particular because it will deliver the exact experience that you need during that time, even though it will make you uncomfortable. So if you're interested in anything that I've said so far, you can definitely go forward and try this book. Next, we have an Indian new adult romance book, and this is the sweetest of all the books that I read in 2024, and it's also very mature, which is When Love Came Calling by Preeti Shenoy. Now, this is a new adult romance book because both of the main characters whom we see here are like 19 and 21 if I'm not wrong. And if you're like 14 and above in age, you can definitely go for and read it. It is perfect for anyone over that age. Here we follow our two main characters, Pooja and Arish. Okay, and of these two, Pooja is super privileged. She's from a very wealthy family, and her mother basically forces her and enrolls her for this volunteer program that she has to do in Wayanad. During the same time, Arish, who's currently living in the UK with his family, comes to Wayanad for one of his projects that he has for his art degree in the final year of his college. After he comes here, because of them being in the same camp or the same volunteer program, they meet each other and fall for each other pretty slowly. It's definitely not insta love. They have a lot of attraction towards each other, but it does not get transformed into love very soon at all. But the catch here is that after the program gets finished, Arish has to return back to the UK. And Pooja still has 1 year of her college yet to finish, just in order to finish her undergraduate degree itself. She's not that well understood by her family, and they are not quite supportive of anything that she wants to do. How both of their lives get intertwined and how are they going to fight for their love and understand whether it is love or not for themselves is the plot of this book. It is very, very well written, and both of these characters, if you ask me, are real people. They are not characters for me. I have the sequel for this one, which is All the Love You Deserve with Me. I will be reading that in 2025, and I'm not sure whether it will be a book club pick or not, but this is easily one of the sweetest things that I've ever read in my life, and also the sweetest book that I've read in 2024. So if you're 14 and above and are craving a good love story, you need to read this book. Next, we have an Indian travel memoir, and it is The Travel Gods Must Be Crazy by Sudha Mahalingam. And this book has been written by the author in her 60s or 70s if I'm not wrong, and it is a good book. The author talks about the various different countries that she's traveled to and various different parts of our country that she's traveled to in almost 3 to 4 decades of her life, and it is really well written in that aspect. But there are two aspects of this book which I did not like. The first one is the fact that the author uses a lot of fancy words just because she knows them, and it was quite irritating for me because using different words here and there is fine. But if you go on and use it for every other sentence like in a newspaper or like a very high profile magazine, it does not feel like a book anymore. It feels more like a textbook, and I don't want to continue reading it because I can't go back and look up for the meaning of each and every other word while I'm reading a book. That was very inconvenient for me. And the second thing is that even though the author has worked so hard and gained so much privilege to go and visit these many countries, she sounded whiny at multiple instances and way too dramatic also. So that is something which I did not like. Apart from that, as a book, it is really good. And the way in which she describes the experiences that she had are also really nice. If you don't like a person complaining, this is not a book for you. But if you can bear with it, it is definitely worth a read. And at last, we have the book club pick from December, which is Yes or No by Dr. Spencer Johnson, which is a short, tiny self-help book on decision making. And personally, if you ask me, you need not read any other book than this one if you want to make better decisions in life and if you are quite indecisive also. I'm glad that I finally even read this book, even though I'm sad that I did not read it earlier in life, because it is super simple to read, very, very short. You can literally finish this in like 2 or 3 hours, like max. And the knowledge you'll gain from it and take forward in your life will be much more than the time that you spend. Again, I've talked in detail about all the things going on in this book in my review. I don't think I'll be able to articulate it properly for you guys in this video. So I'm just going to guide you to the link in the description again. Please do go forward and check it out. I'm sure that this book can help so many people and make so many lives better. So yes guys, those 12 are the books which I read for my book club in 2024, and except for 1 or 2, almost each and every other of them was really good and worth reading. I'm going to do the same for 2025 too, and for the first quarter we are going to read only Indian books for all the 3 months. It might change in the further months of the year, but I'm not sure yet because I have not decided the book club picks for the second quarter so far. If you want to know more about any of these books, please do check out the individual reviews of them from the links below, because I have discussed in detail about each and every one of them in all those videos. Tell me in the description whether you will be joining me for the book club fix this year or not. And if you did find this video useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.